Doug, and I'm going to bring up Ryan and Jess from the film as well. And we're going to chat a little bit. Who's first in the firing line?
I think it should be Jess.
There we go. Okay, round of applause before we get started. I'd like to start off with... So, my first question is just the generic Q&A question of where did the idea come from and how did it get started in your brain?
Yeah, so it was a confluence of a bunch of different things. I want to give the long version of this because it's like 10 different things. But so when I was in high school, I worked at Hardee's, which was the Midwest version of Carl's Jr. And I'll never forget working in it was like one of my first jobs, and I worked alongside this is Minot, North Dakota. There was a big air base up there, and all these nuclear weapons and fighter pilots and stuff. And then I started learning that some of the guys who worked next to me were enlisted guys and officers, and this threw me off. It was very confusing because I just assume if you're in the military, you fly fighter jets, and that's about it. I don't think you necessarily flip burgers next to idiots like me. So this kind of like started screwing my head a little bit that maybe not everybody in the military is a Medal of Honor winner, and so that is that. And I also love this old movie. I'm sorry, Camille. So I love this old movie called The Swimmer, this old Burt Lancaster movie called The Swimmer, which was a short written by John Cheever, and it's this wonderful story about, very similar in many ways, about a guy who just sees all these people and they really like him at the beginning, and at the end of the movie they all think he's a total shithead. And even though the guy really doesn't do much, and even though Ryan has like kind of one really shitty scene, for the most part, he's all right. And your opinions, I would hope, are formed through how other people treat him, and I find that fascinating. So I could probably tell 3 other little ones, but that's the meat of it.
Well, this might just be you elaborating on what I just asked, but this is an interesting film in terms of like it's dealing with a guy. It's dealing with a guy in the military, but it's not dealing with what he's done. It's dealing with what he's coming home to, in a way. So, what was the impetus for that? What kind of inspired that? Did you just want to take a different approach with it, or?
I don't know. I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, going back before, let's say before the ending, it's dealing with someone, like most films that deal with somebody who's in the military or coming back from that, it deals with what they've dealt with more than it does with what they're dealing with.
Right.
And I'm just curious about what made you go that track.
Well, in many ways, he was in the military. He's in the military for 2 reasons. The first of which is I have this cousin, and she married this fellow who won the or earned, or however you want to say it, the Congressional Medal of Honor. This is amazing, right? So that evening after the ceremony, we're all talking, and he tells this story about how he was told leading up to, like, hey, we're going to give you this thing, just to let you know everyone's going to love you, and almost exactly what the old guy tells him in the first scene. Everyone's going to want to buy you a drink, be careful. And when he told me that story, I was like, oh, dude, that's it. I'd always loved The Swimmer. I always liked this idea of telling a story this way. And the idea of like, oh, you can get a drink the whole night. And you start, and the movie starts out and he's in a position of authority. Everyone sees a guy in uniform and, thank you for your service. And there's immediate respect without having to establish anything about what the human really is. And that was a big driver.
How much of the script is on screen, and how much of it changed over the course of production as you were working through the scenes?
I would say, like, it's we added some scenes after principal photography. We added a couple things, but the things in principal photography, I think for the most part, are what's written. Although I'm certain that for their scenes, I don't want to say this, it's not bad, took liberties. There was, like, when we had downtime, they were working on their scenes, and as a result, they can deliver a lot better than I can write it. So so some of it was changed. I think just to more naturally do what you guys felt was more natural.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Does that seem about right?
But in such a little way. I feel like those filler words, that the core of what was in the scenes was on the page. I feel like. Yeah. And it's exciting to see with the additional scenes.
Well, my next question is for you. You now have a history of playing here at this theater, at least. You love alcohol and a little dubious at times. So, what was it about this character that kind of drew you to it?
It's funny. I never thought of him as a bad guy, and I didn't realize how drunk I was gonna have to play. Really, yeah. I drank so much fucking near beer in this thing. It's unbelievable. Just cases of that shit. It's terrible. I was completely sober the whole shoot. This is a challenge, and I mean, while we were shooting. Not
but the one you pounded, was that a real one?
I think that was one real beer. Yeah. I think I did that 3 times. That was brutal. What drew me to it was to try to show some kind of humanity in those people, because I don't know, I'm a relativist. I don't believe there really are bad people. I just think there's people doing their thing, and they were all kids, and everybody's fucked up to some degree. So I was just trying to, add some of that humanity to this. I felt like this was a little weirder to play, to be honest, than the other thing. But yeah.
It was really interesting when we were shooting in Dubuque, because there were a few people I feel like knew we were shooting, but we would be out at night when other people were just at the bars. And a few times I actually got really nervous for Ryan, because it was like art imitating life imitating art at times, and people would come up to him and ask him questions thinking that he was actually, I feel like you even had somebody point out some of the patches on your stuff, so I feel like it was really interesting to experience that side of things from this type of character, in just real life.
We shot some pickups on graduation weekend, and the entire downtown of Dubuque was filled with thousands of people, and they were loaded. And we had the wrong patches, patches from the Marine Corps, the Army, and the Air Force, all on there on purpose as part of the wardrobe design. And this man, people had been thanking me for my service from the second I put the uniform on. I would go to get gas on the way to set, they would thank me for my service. It was unbelievable, and at first I would correct them, because I felt like an imposter, ironically. And then after a while I just stopped, because I was like, Jesus, I'm not going to go through this whole fucking thing. Each time, oh, you're shooting a movie? Oh, shit. And then I have to go through the whole thing. Yeah, we're shooting this movie. It's about singing. And Doug's from Dubuque, but I'm not. I'm from Los Angeles. What's that like? I'm like, oh, I can't do this. I gotta go. So I stopped correcting them like Chad. And people would be like, hey, just have that coffee, man. It's cool. At the A&W place that was open late, and I would take it, man. I was just trying that character on.
You really immersed yourself.
Yeah, totally deep into that. But I will say, on graduation weekend, this one man, and he was a very scary guy. He was much bigger than me, and he had a dyed blue goatee, and his hair was all fucked up, and he was wasted and sweaty, and he came out.
And he chased us.
Yeah, chased us. He's like, hey, man. what the fuck? What is this shit on your arms? He was like trying to rip them off my arms, and I was like, hey man, I'm an actor. That's a camera over there. That's a sound dude right here. You know, we're shooting a movie, and he was so drunk, like he got it for a second and then wanted to go back into it, and he kept saying, we have a real problem with this around here. And thankfully, Doug got him off my back.
Yeah, it was scary. It was he was upset.
I actually have a question for you. Were you aware of how often that sort of thing happens, and especially in like small town, but in different areas where people will just go out in uniform specifically? Like, were you aware of that before?
I mean, I had heard in the news. I'd heard in the news that it happened, but it's not something I really cared about. I didn't think it was very interesting. Although I'll tell you, we're having a screening in like 2.5 weeks in Dubuque where we shot, and so like I felt uncomfortable like going back to Dubuque and saying, okay, everyone would pay to come see my movie. So instead of that, I found this veterans organization to say like, so tickets will cost we're just going to pay them, so that way it's like a fundraiser, and I'm not trying to like hustle more money out of the people that have already helped me. Anyway, so in the process of like coordinating that, I'm talking to them and I'm saying like, well, so here's my movie. So just so you know, like here's what happens at the end. Because I didn't want to like them to be surprised and offended or something. And to my total surprise, I'm like terrified to say this to this woman. And she goes, oh, that's great. We have a huge problem with that here. And it's like this veteran service center where you can go like, play pool, or it's just a place for vets to go hang out. So I was stunned. It was like the opposite answer that I heard, and that I never would have expected. Yeah. Never. I had no idea this was like a real, genuine issue.
Yeah. A lot of films that take place kind of over the course of one night, they kind of, a lot of the traps they fall into are visual. I'm curious, like, how did you work with your DP in terms of like mixing it up and keeping it interesting as it went along to make sure it didn't get redundant or didn't get that kind of just blah feeling that some films get that this one managed to avoid?
Oh, well, I'm glad you think so. Well, my strategy from the beginning was to basically have the camera drink every drink that he had. So towards the end, as the camera would get more drunk and the editing would get worse, and so I tried to have some of these the things I could control in post reflect, and how the camera behaved, reflect his drunkenness. So obviously the camera's I reckon him.
Yeah.
So that was the ins and outs of that effort there. Yeah. But I did. So there's a ton of people in the movie, and going into it, I wasn't certain how great everyone would be. First of all, I want to say Jess and Ryan. I'm so thrilled that Jess can be here for a screening. We've shown it a couple times. I think she was so great. Every time I see the movie, I like the performance more and more. It's so much better on the big screen. But I got lost. I'm sorry. What were we talking about?
The people.
Oh, right.
People.
What about?
You're surprised how good they are.
So
You're
Even
making
though
a
it was-
movie.
Even though it was like my shoulder and your dad floating around, or
Oh man, so many people were in this movie 15 times. But I wasn't sure about the caliber of everybody. I knew that we were going to be getting a lot of local people from Dubuque, and we got a lot of great actors from Chicago, and so I wasn't sure about what the scale would be. So I shot a lot of it for coverage, and that was a very deliberate kind of just covering my ass just in case somebody was atrocious. And, there was a couple. They're not in the movie.
Just a technical, what was your shooting schedule?
I think we shot for 16 days. Isn't that right? 16 days. We had like one half day off where we went and shot some stuff without audio, and then we did pickups and a couple of new scenes. 6 months or a year after the fact. So, but our initial principal photography was at 16 days, I think.
Yeah, that's straight.
Anyone out there have any questions they want to toss up? In the back.
I just had one little thought. Like, as we were watching it, I never saw a cell phone, or at least I don't think I did. So, is there like a period where you had in mind when it was like set? Like, is it modern? Or just like,
That's a really good question. I think you got me. Well, first of all, there is one cell phone. There's one of the girls has a cell phone in it, and she stares at it the whole time. No, it's fine. It's fine. I didn't think of that much. a big part of the effort was I was trying to recreate an atmosphere that reflected how I grew up in high school in a little town in North Dakota, and we didn't have cell phones then. So I guess, also like I think maybe wrote this like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe the cell phone just wasn't that present at the time. I don't know. Your dad did great though. I hope you did it.
Yeah, we showed up and Dan was like, "Oh, he's here."
Any other questions out in the audience? Yeah, right there.
As you worked on this, Doug, from the beginning, did you ever anticipate the number one that it would take you 7 years to get to this point? I mean, we all have ideas and we're gonna do something, and as it turns out, this is more difficult than we ever expected. What's your...
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of that, I really have to thank Ryan, who's done a fantastic job since we finished the movie of getting it seen and making sure it. I mean, when you shoot, so I wrote it 7 years ago. Maybe we shot it 4 years ago. After Principal Photography, we edited it all together, and there was a whole movie, and we showed it to a bunch of people and tried to get into festivals, and our first couple scenes were rough. There were, at a previous Q&A, a guy asked me this, and I regret not saying it. One thing we talked about a lot, which in the first scenes that we got cut, is how being in uniform changed a lot. So back, if you're a Vietnam vet like my father was, thank you, Father, you came back from war, and you were kind of a shitty person for having a uniform on, and I wanted to try to address that. That difference in that scene where we got cut. Anyway, the point is those scenes were really boring and slow, despite being important. So that kind of extended the movie of the process. So we knew it was probably best to get rid of these slow, boring scenes that nobody likes. And
We hung on to him though.
Yeah, we they stuck around longer than they should have. I just cut it to the very. No, it was still not good. So yeah, it was really hard. It was challenging, and to be screening the movie is nuts in a way. I didn't think. I don't know. It was rough for me for a while, and I really have to thank Ryan for sticking with it and always being, anytime the idea of like going to your producer and going, oh dude, I think this is not great. Can we go reshoot this? I'm terrified to ask this. No one wants to go reshoot anything, but Ryan was extremely supportive and really behind every change we want to make and everything we want to do along the way. And that I thank you 1,000 times as I have before, but with an audience with
Right there.
What would, with this on the table, what would any of you say was maybe your favorite scene or moment that didn't make it in?
I don't think I liked anything that I didn't make it in. I regret that I couldn't say those things about something that was important to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't miss anything. But I'll say someone out there, they asked me what my favorite scene is. I really like the pool scene. I love when they're playing pool. I think it's great performances, and it's hard to. There's so many great elements. I feel like every scene is so different. But I'm jazzed about the pool scene. I always like watching that one.
Yeah.
I think we should answer what our favorite scenes are.
Favorite scene.
It doesn't have to be on your end of it.
My favorite scene is actually early on when you're talking to the Phils and Felix. That's my favorite scene. Just the energy, even when you guys were filming, the energy of all of the guys, it was so wonderfully cast. You really just all felt like you had grown up and known each other, and that was right at the start, or at least I feel like for me it was one of the early days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my favorite scene.
Mhm.
I am a little sad that Jeremy Clark's butt is in it. I can't unsee that now. So thanks.
Yeah, the Jeremy Clark butt scene, not my favorite.
No.
I don't know. I like that bar scene too. That one with the pool. I thought it was good. It was a lot of fun. I felt like I was doing scenes with Robin Williams the whole time. It was weird.
Yeah, he's great. So I gotta say, so in the spirit of the chemistry, I think I don't know. Did the Phils know each other before that?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay, but Jonathan, you didn't.
I didn't know.
So, but we were all staying at my grandmother's house. My grandmother's house basically was like a barracks, where upwards of 10 people, I don't know, tons of people were sleeping in this house. And so there are inflatable mattresses all over the basement, and I think, between that and, hanging out and drinking and, we all had meals together and pizzas, and I think that went for something. I mean, in this funny way, I feel like the people who are in scenes together are kind of still friends. I don't know. I feel like, we all became buddies.
Bonding process for sure.
Any other questions out there?
So my favorite scene was the one in front of the stairs, and I was wondering, like, how did you, were kind of the scenes there sort of revolving around finding the stairs, or how do you find stuff like that? Like, was that in the bar, just sort of like plan your stuff in the bar and go, oh, let's film it over here, or was that like, in a movie theater or something?
No, it was totally lucky. We, I think we were supposed to shoot that scene someplace else, and honestly, the day of or day before, like 8 o'clock that morning, we were supposed to shoot at 11 that night. They totally bailed on us. They're like, oh, we're not gonna, I think that was part of the confusion. Like we'll be there at midnight on the 3rd. Well, to him that was midnight on the 4th, and so everything got crazy. And so another place that we were shooting the scenes with Melinda, they also own this other bar, so they let us use this other place, and the stairs are just there, and we all just died. I mean, it was
like the basement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Like,
like
they were
this,
like, no one uses this.
yeah, it's like this ancillary kind of downtown, downstairs area that they'll use if they need a party or something like that, which has made it very convenient for us. But they were very cooperative and cool, and we shot the scene. Well, first of all, this is another scene that they totally. I'm a director, but I think that scene in particular, they worked out very much between themselves. I know they did a lot of rehearsals about that, and in Grandmom's house, I'm walking around and they're working on the scene, and all these other things are happening. Also, I have to say that I'm really proud of that scene. We shot it. We also shot it for coverage. So we had a tight and then a wide, and in cutting it, it was they did the whole. I mean, there's no cuts. They're just in front of their stairs the whole time, and I think that's a testament to their great performance, and I think it also adds to the great tension that builds up by just holding on to it. And I remember our BR, our everything, who was on set. When I got done, he's like, "Oh man, that was intense," and we couldn't decide, like, do we emotionally all have that in us to do that again? Because we all love Jess, and Ryan's an asshole, and he's like assaulting her, and we're all just standing there like we're just supposed to just take this. And it's hard to watch, And I think the same goes for Ryan too. I'm sorry I'm yapping so much, but everyone's really mean to Ryan at the end. And I think that was really hard for him in a way. Like, there's some scenes I felt really bad because people are just like shitting on him for like 5 minutes straight, and he's just got to take it.
I have a funny story about that. Antonio in the bar where we played pool, I met him that morning or that evening, and we talked for about 5 minutes, and he was like, "Oh, this fucking sucks," just out of nowhere. And I said, "What?" And he said, "You're cool. This sucks. It's gonna be really hard to be mean to you now. So we have to stop talking. You go do something else, and I'm gonna get pissed again and work on my prep." And I went, "Cool, man." So I went and ran around the block a bunch of times, which was weird. But
Antonio's very like.
super method.
So a lot of these actors came from Chicago, so in many cases we had to drive to Chicago and pick them up. You think it was really like, oh, this is convenient, it's just 3 hours away. But it's 3 hours there, then 3 hours back. So, sitting in the car with Antonio, who I didn't really know for beans. Everyone was cast on a Skype audition because we didn't, I'm not going to fly out to Chicago. So I did Skype on everyone, Jonathan, and so I didn't really know Antonio. Then a 3-hour car ride is all about the Eastern European playwrights that he reads, and it's just like he's like, "Well, what's my motivation?" I'm like, "Well, it's, used to be your sister, he's mean to your sister," and he wanted way more than that, and I had nothing, and it was a very long drive because I realized I had to meet his expectations, which were really high. But he was great performance.
I'm curious, was there ever throughout the course of production or post-production, was there ever any influence or any thoughts about having a different ending to the film? Or was that always
Yeah, so, that's funny you should say that. So through our trials and tribulations of submitting to, you know, giant festivals and not getting our way, and you know, I would say to Doug, you know, we have a great drama here, Doug, and if this doesn't work out, we can just go shoot some more pickups and basically just Chad kills his fucking parents or shoots his dad in their room. I mean, I was even pitching that at the last minute. I'm like,
For
we can
real, it was a
still
real
change
conversation.
that audio while the camera's holding on that open door. Then he just kills his dad. Yeah. I don't know, man. Let's try another round of festivals. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's like these horror movies, they're really sell these days.
Oh, man.
Oh my god. Sorry.
Any other questions from the audience? Right there.
I have a question, Doug. You know, you started writing this a long time ago. How did you feel about Chad when you were actually writing it? I mean, obviously you're writing the script to sort of dress down this guy by the end of it, but like, you know, Ryan comes in and makes it very sympathetic, you know, as much as he's an asshole through the latter third of the movie. I mean, did your opinions of this character change through the process of shooting it or writing it, or are they the same, or?
That's a really good question. Yeah, a little bit because of some of those conversations about like what can we do at the end, like how can we change this. It got me thinking about different kinds of things and different places it could go. Do you have any 2 cents about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted him to be far more of a villain when we first started out,
Mhm.
and then I feel like through the journey we kind of he humanized more and more, right?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
You know, at first, I don't know if there was as much of an effort to make him look as great as he was at the beginning. Like, like at first, I'm not sure. You know, I was trying to go for total G.I. Joe. You know, everyone's favorite guy. But that changed. You know, once you start seeing where it had to go, then you got to prop up this side. You know, I'm trying to. You know, a big goal was to try to actually do 3 things. This is the answer here. So, because initially I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to say like he's a great guy and then he's an asshole. But through the course of it, I realized that it's hard. It's a tough end on asshole. And if we could make him sympathetic at the end, that would be a total, you know, another turn that he could make. And so my goal was you know, nice guy, asshole. Oh, you know, that poor guy. And I'd like to think. I mean, I think that's kind of there. I think I'm very actually proud of that because it feels like it's a natural curve of 3 different emotions for the same character, and I think that's cool. And that third emotion of pity, I don't think came along so much later.
Got time for a couple more. Anybody in the audience?
And also, Jonathan's here. I feel like he should say something.
Well, come on up, Jonathan.
Chicago.
What's that?
So you got a quick question for everybody, please.
Woo!
Oh, sweet, cool, thank you. Does anyone have a question for Jonathan?
I don't really have one for Jonathan. I was told maybe the group as a whole. Again, of the whole process. Again, as I questioned before, it was over a 7-year period. What do you consider the most difficult part about having, from the concept of when you were growing up in Minot to this point of getting this job done? Which you started as a concept way back then and said, how do I get this done? Staying committed to that, to follow it all the way through, to putting together a cast, a great group of people, and then having created a successful little movie out of the whole thing. What do you consider the most difficult part of doing all that?
Well, thanks for the success line. And I have to give credit to my wife who's not here, 2 brothers in the back, Paul and James. Melinda did a lot of the casting work and just did a fantastic job, I think. We've got a lot of great people in the right spots. And I think that's the answer to the question. I think like if I'm working on something or shooting something that day, I'm filled with anxiety because I don't want to waste people's time, and I think that, here's 10 people here waiting for my answers. That's the hardest part, coordinating people and giving respect to their time and not screwing over their time. That's what gives me anxiety, just not wasting people's time.
What attracted you to the project?
I had a couple reasons. A, I've grown up with a lot of friends that were in the military and in a military family, and one of the weird things that I always hear from them is when the experience when they get back is they don't feel like heroes or anything in particular. In a lot of ways, I've known a lot of people that have a lot of shame afterwards for things that happened or things they witnessed, and then they go out to wherever and everyone wants to buy them drinks and call them a hero and all this stuff, and it puts them in a predicament because they can't say, no, screw off, I'm not a hero. They have to accept it and move on, and it puts a strange pressure on them. And I don't see that in film. I don't see discussing that aspect that I thought was really fascinating. Like, the key scene to me is when you leave the bowling alley and the guy goes, I didn't like that fucking guy in high school.
Oh, it's my favorite part of the whole
Right.
movie.
Favorite part.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Like,
That shift.
there's I respect the hell out of that. Everyone who served for this country, but there are some assholes that have served for this country too, and I've known some of them, and I appreciate their service, but they were still a dick, and it's a weird conflict that you put yourself in, and that was very drawing to me. And for Felix, I also love playing really asshole characters. I find them fascinating, and Felix he's a fascinating guy. But I think with like your character, my character, they weren't the best people ever.
No.
But it was a compensation. Like your character had a really rough upbringing. Your dad was brutal. I've known a lot of guys that act just like Felix, who put on a strong air in order to compensate for something lacking, and that's what I find intriguing about playing those characters.
Yeah.
Great. Cool.
Yeah.
And one other thing I will say about the military service stuff, which I don't know, my dad served in the military, but he didn't serve here, and because of where he served, they were not considered heroes. If anything, they were kind of on the wrong side of history, and that kind of gave me a different feeling about it, to where I don't know, I was okay with digging into the dark about that. You know, I didn't get the whole hero thing at all. And Doug was like, no, he's super heroic here. And I'm like, okay. So it was different for me. I guess I approached it from a totally different angle because of that. Yeah.
Camille, while you're trying.
Yeah.
Jess.
I'm sorry, what's the base question? what attracted me to the project?
Yes.
Oh, great. So I knew Jeremy Clark. We had done the acting program together at Purdue, and he had just mentioned to me, hey, I know these guys, I worked on another project, blah, blah, blah. There's this thing, I think you'd be great for it. Do you want to Skype? And I was like, oh, yeah, this sounds amazing. And honestly, what drew me to the project was my Skype audition with you. I think Leonard was in the background, and
My son.
Leonard, and I was just like, I want to do this. Like, I want to do this. This is one of those projects where everyone is on board, filling in however you can. It had such a family sort of feel to it, even though we had just met each other. And those are the types of projects that I absolutely love. Because if I'm not on camera, if there's something I can do behind camera, I'm happy to do it. And you guys were definitely the type of group to do that with. So that's really what drew me to it.
My final question is for you three, and it is essentially, where do you think your characters are now? Do you think that they have learned anything, or do you think that they're still just trucking along down the same road?
Do you want to go first?
I'll go for it.
I'm short. Yeah, I've been Camille in a way. If I met my college self now, I would punch myself in the face. So naive and just idealistic, and while those are wonderful characteristics in a person, you're just like, oh, sweetie, like, so I feel like this was her wake-up call, and I think she did a lot of growing up, and then she's probably learned a lesson or two since then, but probably not moved to the city.
I think Chad is much like a lot of the guys who were in my hometown that I went to high school with, who still work at the lumber company and are weekend warriors, and this is gonna sound awful, but live quiet lives of like painful desperation. And I see them whenever I go home, and they're like, oh, you know, and I'm like, fuck, man. So I think Chad is probably still working at that storage place outside of town, and he probably got a DUI. Yeah, couple. Yeah, and his mom does not talk to him or do his laundry.
I don't think Felix has learned anything. Parts of Felix I really enjoy. I imagine he knocked a girl up and then he locked it down because he's not a total asshole. You get it. I imagine he has a couple more in a dead-end job, but he still goes to the bar and tries to pick up college girls because it's the only thing that makes him feel interesting.
Yeah. I think that's a good ending note. Let's give it up for the cast. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you guys for participating in the Q&A.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for
Everybody
coming.
get home safe.
We are going down the street to Stella Bar. There's a wine pizza bar down the street. It's on Sunset.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. That's great.
Douglas, be alert.
Yeah.
He's still taping.
Thanks for coming.
He won't stop. Bye.
It's like a stalker.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks.
And then they looked at me, they're like, you're such an asshole. Like, I know he always plays his game.